I'll begin with the opening question for all the candidates. Given the emergency nature of the climate situation, what top 3 actions would you commit to taking as a senator to mobilize our country's resources, ingenuity, to rapidly address the crisis? And we'll start from left to right.
Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Angela Williams, and I'm running for the United States Senate. I have been in the Colorado legislature for nearly a decade now, fighting for policies on climate change so we can save our planet. The first 3 things that I would do, or the top 3 actions to address climate change, which I have done in the Colorado legislature, is to enact policies that would aggressively address and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I think we ought to return to the Paris Climate Agreement so that we can put carbon pollution limits, and we need to address a just transition plan. Because if we're going to transition out of fossil fuels, we need to be sensitive to those who are employed by these areas, and we need to make sure that we have monies that will go to training those people, training them in other areas where they can make a living. And so I think this is important, and if I may add one more, I think it's so critically important that we include and we look at and involve communities who are disproportionately affected by climate change, which are low income and underserved.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trisha Zornio, your friendly scientist running for the United States Senate. And I got involved in this mission because I deeply believe that we need at least 1 scientist on the Science Committee in the United States Senate. There are currently 0. I know. And look, this is actually my top issue on this campaign, and this is exactly why we need scientists at this table. Anthropogenic climate change actually poses catastrophic risks to our national and economic security, and we are ready to propose a series of strategies that are not only legislative to be able to do that. I'm excited to release this here to you today. This is a combination of mitigation and adaptation strategies, and specifically we are calling for global involvement and leadership from the United States. Specifically, we'd like to call for an organizational structure called the Office of Climate Mobilization, and it would be a super agency akin to that was achieved in the World War II under President Franklin Roosevelt. We would like to propose that Office of Climate Mobilization, or the OCM, would actually work to develop unified programs with qualified experts and establish evidence and equity-based policies to achieve an 80%, extremely aggressive 80% U.S. greenhouse gas reduction and drawdown by 2028, as well as hitting the subsequent milestone of net GHG negative by 2045. We would also like to leverage public and private sector cooperation to achieve this rapid industrial scale that will be needed to make these achievements. And to that end, we would have a series of legislative considerations to support, first of all, the transition from cleaning up the electricity sector and then further electrifying everything. I look forward to sharing those with you, and for those of you who did not yet get a policy, you can visit our website after at zornio2020.com, and we will prepare that for you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Romanoff. I want to say thanks to all of you who are joining us today and leading this fight, especially the young people who are here. As you reminded me, you're going to live with the consequences of this decision longer than the rest of us. And the truth is, what we need is bold, aggressive action to combat the climate crisis and treat it as the fundamental moral test of our time. I led the legislature in Colorado as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, joined my friend Alice Madden in leading the Democrats to our first majority in 30 years, our first back-to-back majorities since the 1960s. I've spent the last 4 years running a mental health organization, trying to lead the fight for the prevention and treatment of mental health and substance use disorders. The first thing I do is to take some inspiration from the original New Deal and enact a Green New Deal that ends our reliance on fossil fuel and accelerates our transition to a clean energy economy. Second, we ought to stop subsidizing the oil and gas and coal industry. We ought to take the $650 billion a year that we're spending in direct and indirect subsidies for that industry and put it instead into the research and development and implementation of a clean energy infrastructure, including solar and wind and other renewables. The third thing we ought to do is break this unholy alliance that allows the fossil fuel industry to bankroll Congress and block reform. We ought to instead elect candidates who take the pledge that most of us, I think, on this stage have taken: no fossil fuel money. As long as we allow companies like Exxon to buy members of the Natural Resources Committee like Cory Gardner, we will never get the kind of transformational change we need.
My name is Bray, and I'm a clinical psychologist, mom of 4 kids, and I've been involved in climate activism for 10 years. I'm going to try to channel Greta Thunberg, who only speaks when she has something important to say. That's part of my goal today. And I want to say that it's a fascinating experience running for U.S. Senate because we're always asked about what we've done, what we've accomplished. And in thinking about climate, actually, most of the time what I think about is what I haven't done. Have I done enough, personally, professionally, in terms of everything that I'm doing every day? And this has been my obsession. So what I actually think about is what I haven't accomplished and how many challenges we have ahead. So it was really hard to come up with just 3 issues that really need to be addressed right now. But the 3 that I've come up with are ban fracking, stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry, and stop polluting and drilling on public lands. Those are the 3 that are most important to me, but there are another 10 that if I have time I will get to. I want to actually use my last few seconds to challenge everyone here. I would like to know, the candidates here and in the audience, who supported 112, Proposition 112, the Safer Setback measure last year? Raise your hands if you support it. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate the energy. I think there's tremendous progressive energy here, and I can't wait to see what we can do together. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lorena Garcia, and I am also running for U.S. Senate. Anyone out there decided to run for U.S. Senate? Just come on the stage. Hey. So I decided to run for U.S. Senate because I believe that the issues that we're facing today, they're so compounding upon each other. They're unlike anything we've ever faced. And that means that we cannot rely on the same old, same old. We need new type of leadership to take us to the place where we are going to actually see action happen. When it comes to climate change, this isn't going to be easy. It's not, we can't take it lightly. We're going to have to make decisions, and we're going to have to make actions, and we're going to have to force people, force industries, and force action. Because deregulation has led us to this place. So the top 3 things that I'll be working on, just like Diana says, there's like 20. The first 3 things is 1, ban fracking. The number 2 thing, invest heavily in infrastructure so that we can actually shift to 100% renewable energy, and that actually includes also investing in the science and the technology that we need to store renewable energy. And finally, what I want us to do is create a partnership with the other 4 countries, including Russia, who just signed into the Paris Climate Agreement on September 23rd, to develop a reforestation plan so that we can actually build a natural process. Thank you. Reforestation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle. Is my mic on?
Oh, there we go.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Ferrigno-Warren, and for the last 10 years, I have been working alongside Congress both as a policy expert and as a builder of coalitions. One of the reasons that I am running for United States Senate is because I know that we have incredible challenges that face us here in the 21st century, and climate is one of those issues. And I know that it's going to take leaders who have built coalitions and who have built trust and respect with people who do not look like them, and that do not think like them. The reality is the climate crisis is so pressing that we cannot even wait until the election. We need to ensure that we pass the Climate Action Now Act. As we cannot allow our future and our earth and our environment to be set to the whims of an administration, which is why the first thing that I would do is to ensure that those rules would become law, and that we would be able to stay at the table and join the global community and ensure that we are working towards environmental justice. The second thing that I would want to do is to provide incentives to both individual consumers and businesses to work towards net zero emissions. And then finally, we need to create real, sustainable solutions that move us away from fossil fuels.
Hi, my name is Joshua Rodriguez. I'm a candidate for the United States Senate. On my climate ribbon, there's a creek by my house called Ralston Creek. My kids play in it now, just like I did when I was younger, and I think I would miss that. I've been working in the science industry for 10 years now. I also operate a nonprofit called Madden, benefiting at-risk and homeless youth in the community. The three things I would like to focus on is reducing carbon emissions by 2030. I think that's a realistic goal. We should move towards that. Requiring 30% of all cars to be electric on the lot. Our automotive industry is tooled up, ready to go, so let's do it. Increasing renewable energy through grants and affordable loans. We need to make sure people have the opportunity to put solar panels on their roofs and not worry about how to afford it. We'll continue to use the Clean Air Act to stop runaway carbon polluters. And just while I have my 60 seconds, biofuels as an alternative to natural gas. And I know a lot of us want to ban fracking, but that opportunity isn't realistic right now because we made a huge investment, $1.5 billion investment into our energy plants. And so that was an alternative to the coal-fired plants. And so we need to come up with alternative technology like biofuels, and so we can have the opportunity to ban fracking. Thank you.
All right, ready for me, Mr. Timer? Hey, thank you, organizers, moderators. Thank you to our translators over here. I'm Alice Madden. I'm a mom. I'm a lawyer. I've been an elected official, an Obama appointee. My first environmental activism began as a teen, keeping a dam off a beautiful river in Missouri where I grew up. Moved to Colorado for college and law school and continued that activism, protecting open lands and helping reintroduce wolves in the Yellowstone, something I'm really proud of. And I decided to run for office. After practicing law for 10 years, I became disillusioned with the access to justice, so I decided to run for office and change things. We took over, as Andrew mentioned, and we were able to implement an historic array of clean energy bills in Colorado. Governor Bill Ritter then hired me to join his senior staff to implement those bills. I'm really proud that I got to close 2 coal plants early, the first time that it ever happened. This is in 2010, getting 900 megawatts of coal offline. Obama really loved what we were doing here, so he hired me to work at the Department of Energy, where I got to work on his presidential action plan. But if we want to continue the world in a way I think we'd like to see for future generations, we need to think bigger than carbon neutrality. We need to go carbon negative. So here are the few things I would like to do, and I know we get to talk a little bit more. Decarbonize the utility sector by 2035. Renewable energy, battery storage, and increased efficiency in our built environment. Decarbonize all new cars, trucks, buses by 2030, paired with tax incentive for purchasing, cash for clunkers, and continued support of battery technology, and really importantly, improving technology on carbon sequestration and things like cement. Oh, sorry. That actually said -10, sorry.
Hello, Colorado. Welcome to Colorado Springs. It's the first time in a long time that I have not had to drive at least an hour and a half somewhere. So I'm glad you all are here in my home and also here in my community and here in my university. I am Stephanie Rose Spaulding, Professor of Women's and Ethnic Studies here at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. I see some of my students in the audience. I'm glad to see you here. I have spent my career, and they're not here because I invited them here, right? They're here because they want to be here. I've spent my career doing this work around social justice and activism and encouraging my students, training them, teaching them how to do this work in their own lives. So as we think about what the question actually asks in terms of rapidly addressing and mobilizing our country's resources, because if we're talking about policy, that's longer term. The greatest resource, the greatest asset that we need to mobilize right now, as Bernie talks about, is you, your peers, and everyone else to do this work, because we cannot decarbonize our economy without a mobilization of people. will hold accountable the fossil fuel industries, the politicians on both the left and the right who are in the pockets of fossil fuel organizations and lobbyists. So I'm here. This is the work. You are the work, and we will do this together.
I'm Gary Swing. I identify myself as a free thinker and adventurer. I promote cultural events in Denver. In my spare time, I climbed all of Colorado's 637 mountains over 13,000 feet. Then I backpacked the Appalachian Trail, Colorado Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Arizona Trail. I spent 6 months tramping around the rainforests of New Zealand by myself. In 1984, I read that the Green Party was a political alliance of peace activists and environmentalists. I was a Green Party candidate several times. In 2016, I received the most votes cast for any Green Party candidate for Congress in the country in the past 4 election cycles. 2 years ago, I was elected as a state co-chair of Colorado's Green Party. I switched to the Unity Party because Colorado's Green Party has been taken over by a totalitarian faction. As a wise frog once sang, "It's not easy being green." I advocate a campaign to end world hunger and an end to U.S. foreign military intervention. Everyone should have fair representation. I propose to abolish the U.S. Senate and elect Congress by proportional representation. I support the original Green New Deal proposed by the Green Party. I call for cutting the U.S. military budget by 75% and creating a 100% clean energy economy by 2030. Climate change is a product of human overpopulation and overconsumption. I support public funding for birth control and family planning programs worldwide. Animal agriculture has replaced natural biological diversity. We should stop subsidizing the meat and dairy industry and transition to sustainable agriculture with a locally grown plant-based diet.
All right, so now we move on to the policy questions. Each candidate has randomly selected one, and the other candidates, there will be 2 opportunities for rebuttals after each question is answered, and then a 60-second response from the original candidate.
And this first question is for Joshua Rodriguez. Cumulatively, the U.S. is responsible for emitting more greenhouse gases than any other nation on Earth. However, we contribute 15% of the annual emissions today. China and India together account for more than a third of the global emissions today, and the percentage continues to grow. Bear in mind, our consumption is a major driver of their emissions. What role do you see the U.S. play in global greenhouse gas reductions? How do you plan to work with countries like China and India to meet the global emissions reductions goals?
So 70% of China and India's energy consumption is from industrial uses, like producing steel, cement, and petrochemicals. So they use coal-fired power plants. The United States has transferred over to natural gas as an alternative because it's cleaner burning by 50%. And so the biggest buyer of those products are from South Korea. And so we need to be asking countries like South Korea to buy from steel mills that use clean energy. It just makes sense. For example, Pueblo Steel Mill, they're building a 240 megawatt solar facility. So if you think about international transportation, there's another opportunity there. Freight transportation, which is going to quadruple by 2050. You can compile maritime data. You can improve navigational routes. You can also develop new technology with emission statement to reduce transportation related to carbon emissions. And so those are the things that I think we should be focused on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttals to that answer?
Methane gas is not an acceptable bridge fuel. That was some of the thinking over a decade ago, and that's an absolute falsehood. Methane is a heat-trapping gas. We have a situation now in the Arctic and in other places as well where the ice is melting. The Greenland ice sheet, if it melts, sea rises go up 20 feet. And if we have a disaster of that type, Not only will catastrophic climate disaster extend into every part of the world, but it will be the most massive humanitarian disaster that we've ever seen. Methane gas is not a suitable transition. It is not acceptable to go to methane gas. And the coal-fired power plant here in Drake is also a disaster. We'll get into that as well.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? Alice, thanks.
Thank you. So part of the question was talking about India and China. We can't lead from behind, and that's where we are right now with Trump, right? So Obama really put us back on the stage in 2009 for the first time. We were a big presence at the UN conference. Clinton and Obama actually crashed a secret meeting of China and India, and we were able to push them on their commitments. That's the kind of leadership we need again. So we're going to take the Oval in 2020, we're going to take the Senate, we're going to restore our democracy, and we're going to be able to lead the rest of the world. You have to walk the walk yourself. You can't tell other countries to do this if you are not willing to do it yourself. So we have to have quantifiable and verifiable greenhouse gas reduction goals for our country, and we have to recommit to helping fund developing countries for the mess that we have put on them.
Thank you.
Would you like to rebuttal?
So I've been working in the science industry for 10 years now, so I understand this issue quite well. I had the opportunity to visit our National Energy Removal Laboratory, and our United States invests about $1.3 billion each year into those programs. One of the programs that they're building is using bacteria, an enzyme, to one of the byproducts is ethanol. And so they're coming up with ways to reduce the cost to produce ethanol at mass production. Now in Colorado, we have $1.5 billion investment into our energy plants, specifically our natural gas energy plants. And so Xcel Energy will say, we're going to get 100% renewable energy by 2050. That's true. And that's because they need to pay down that $1.5 billion investment. So if we don't pay that investment down, they're not going to start the process to fix that. And so if we don't invest into alternative technologies like biofuels, we won't be able to actually have our 100% renewable energy goals. We can do that with biofuels.
All right, thank you. On to our next question. This is for Diana Bray. Access to clean water is considered by many to be a basic human right. Water contamination is a real issue in Colorado, and it disproportionately affects low-income and minority communities. The EPA continues to affirm with continued studies that fracking is capable of contaminating groundwater. What will you do in Congress to prioritize the access to clean drinking water for all Americans, regardless of where they live?
So there's an enormous social justice component to access to clean water. All over the country, all over the world, people lack clean water. So this is what we absolutely have to focus on in all of our conversation, the social justice travesty that is happening. So the first thing that we have to do is acknowledge that we have a major problem where industry